Hi, it's Jackie from the Lightworkers Growth Society, and I wanted to tell you and share with you today my journey. So from non-believer to teacher. And I know that some of you already know this story and some of you don't. So I just wanted to share it with you and just to give you a little bit of an insight as to what it's like for somebody who was a complete non-believer to now teaching all things spiritual. So I'll take you back to 2004. This is where it all began for me. And so at the beginning of 2004, I was working in a travel agent. Well, I was the manager of a big international travel agents in Sheffield. And it was maybe a £2 million company, I think. £2 million branch. And I don't know, it always felt as if there was something missing in my life, but I didn't know what it was. I'd kind of, so even before I knew anything about law of attraction and manifesting, I remember walking down the street and seeing this travel agent, because it was a blue chip company, and thinking, I want to work there. I want to work in that travel agency. And at that time, I didn't know anybody that worked there. And I remember applying for a job and I didn't even get an interview. I don't know why. And then it was a few years later, I think, and somebody who I knew from a previous travel job was then working there. And she then told me that they got jobs available. So I applied, got the job, and then we fast forward and I became the manager. And now when I think about law of attraction, and I think that day when I was looking at that agency and saying, I want to work there, little did I know that I was actually going to end up managing it. I digress. Back to 2004. I'd got a lovely house, nice car, great friends, great social life, money. So everything that you would want to have. At that point, I was in a relationship, but it still felt like there was, I just had a break there to just get a little bit of a drink of water. So it still felt like I was kind of just existing and not really enjoying my life. And then in May of that year, so I got a new car. I'd had it for about a year. And I was driving up to my sister's who lives in Carlisle. So up the M1, M62, M61, and then the M6. And while I was driving out of town, out of the town centre, I kept getting the word accident coming to me. And I didn't know why, I didn't know what it was saying, or why I kept getting this word. So I just ignored it. And then I was in the fast lane of the M6, and this was on a busy Friday night. And I basically lost control of the car. We still don't really know what happened. The police said I'd had 2 blowouts, which is pretty, for something like that to have happened. So I was in the fast lane, probably doing 70, 75, 80 miles an hour, whatever it was. And I lost control. And I just remember in that split second, just sort of like praying and it's like, oh my God, this can't be happening. And I literally span across the whole of the motorway and ended up in a ditch without a scratch on me. But obviously I was shaken up, and obviously when the car came, I saw that all the cars had stopped and they were all shouting at me and telling me to get out of the car. And when I got out of the car, I saw that the exhaust was sticking out of the front of underneath the front of the car. And I think that they were thinking that it was going to catch fire. Hence why they were telling me to get out of the car. And do you know, there was some lovely people that day who sat with me while I was in this kind of traumatized daze. And, you know, they were obviously guardian angels that day to help me, to sit with me until the police arrived and the ambulance. And I was, at that point, it hadn't even really sunk in, you know, that the car, anybody looking at the car would know that it was a write-off. But there was nothing wrong with me, not even a scratch, just nothing. It was all emotional stuff, you know. And if you've had a car accident, you'll know how it does affect you. And I was then told, obviously, that the car was written off. And then that was kind of what changed where I was, because all I kept thinking was something or somebody was looking out for me and watching over me that day. Because what are the chances of, on a Friday night on the M6, somebody has a car accident with no other cars involved and no physical injuries? So my mind just started thinking, you know, what happened? What's going on here? And one of the girls who I worked with was very spiritual. And I remember when, you know, she used to come in and talk to us about all of these like courses and workshops and things that she was on. And I just thought it was a load of rubbish. And, you know, my sister was very much into angels and crystals and having readings. And I was just like, it's just rubbish. It's just not. Why are you interested in all of this stuff? And then, so the girl at work said she could see that I was kind of going down into this depression, really, you know, and it got worse after the accident. And I was drinking, not alcoholic drinking, but I was drinking to help me get to sleep. I was drinking to block things out. And it was just it was my coping mechanism. And she said to me, I think that my spiritual teacher could help you. And she said, give me a piece of jewellery and I'm going to go away and give it to her and see what she comes back with. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, right, yeah. As if this is going to bring anything. She brought it back a week later or whatever, and she said, okay, well, she said this, and this about you. And I was like, what? Whoa, how has she got that from a ring? That's just impossible. And she said, I think you need to go and see her. I was like, right, okay. So I'll go and book in with her. Once I booked in with her, my friend said, okay, just to let you know that she's a white witch. And I was like, oh, wow. This is just so far out of my comfort zone. You couldn't get any further outside of my comfort zone. Anyway, the day arrived when I was going to see her. And I remember driving there. And I was actually crying on the way because I felt so desolate. I felt so alone more than anything, I think. I got to her house and she opened the door and she was wearing this like white flowing caftan outfit. And went into her house and we were stood in the kitchen and she'd got a dog and she was telling me how she had manifested her dog. And I remember looking at her and thinking, oh, she's not all there, is she? She's a bit of a Fruit Loop. You know, you can't manifest a dog. You've either got a dog or you haven't got a dog. You don't just manifest one. Anyway, then we went into the lounge And she got this big ruler thing out, and she started looking at my palm. And she was measuring my palm, and I'm thinking, what's she doing? And she looked at me and she said, "You are highly psychic." And I was like, right, okay. "You can read tarot cards if you wanted to." And I was thinking, why on earth would I want to read tarot cards? And then she said, "You are very, very spiritual." That was it. I thought, oh, she's lost the plot here. Because I didn't feel like I've got a spiritual bone in my body. And also at that time, I associated being spiritual with being religious, and I wasn't religious. So I didn't understand the difference between the two, which obviously now I do. Even so, had I even known the difference, I would have still said, no way, I'm not spiritual. And then her final kind of moment was when she said to me that you are a victim of your own thoughts. Whoa. What does that mean? She said when you have these bad negative thoughts, that's what is creating your life. Because I remember saying to her that like lots of negative things kept happening to me and I didn't understand why. So when she said that, it was like she just sort of slapped me across the face, you know. I was like, how rude. What? Fancy telling me that? But it piqued my interest. And then she gave me a book. I can't even remember what the book was. I remember I was reading it and it was something about, it talked about God in there, which again at that point, I wasn't really associating with it, so I didn't carry on reading the book. I remember leaving her house that day, and for the first time in, I don't remember how long, I just felt hope. Felt like I got hope, like something was finally happening in my life where it could start to go right. It could start to have an impact on me. And that was it. That was the beginning of my journey. So I started researching spirituality. I then got into looking at angels and archangels and working with them. I looked at like positive mindset. I bought these CDs. I think it was a pack of about 8 CDs that all talked about the power of the mind and how great it was. And also I was discovering things that I thought that other people didn't experience. So for instance, you know, the monkey mind, you know, when you've got this chattering thing on your shoulder telling you that you're not good enough or you can't do this or you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. I'd had the conversations with this, you know, ego for obviously as long as you can remember, because it's what everybody experiences. But I didn't know that. So it was a little bit of confirmation knowing that actually some of the things I was experiencing were normal. And also so this was probably a couple of years before 2004, I would, when I was going to sleep at night, closing my eyes, I would get faces coming at me. And it was pretty scary because I didn't know what they were, and I couldn't understand it and process it in my mind as to what was happening and what was going off. I now know that, so through my sort of research and development, I think it was Tony Stockwell I read, he'd said that it's a sign of clairvoyance, so a sign of clear seeing. The more I got on my spiritual journey, the more that kind of progressed. So I'd be waking up at 3 and 4 in the morning, and there'd be people stood in my bedroom. It's not what you want. So I had to learn how to control that. And there was once, again, this was before I got onto my spiritual path, my spiritual journey. There was, it was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and I woke up. So this was prior to the people just standing in my bedroom. This was so I think I was about 32, something like that. Woke up and she was stood there at the end of my bed. And I was like, who is this? And didn't move, was just sort of staring out of the window. So I didn't feel frightened. Even though I didn't know who she was, I didn't feel frightened. But I sort of went under the covers, came, back out. She was still there. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to close my eyes. So I closed my eyes and opened my eyes, and she was still there. And then eventually she just disappeared. And to this day, I don't know who she was. And yeah, so I've no idea. I've never seen her again. Don't know who she was. But I think it was just part of my journey into all of this. So back to the research. I've been researching power of the mind, positive mindset, and I then discovered law of attraction. So way before The Secret came out, I understood and started to work with the law of attraction and manifesting and understanding how amazing it was, really, when you sort of put your mind to it. And I remember going to a Mind, Body, Spirit fair. I think it was in Manchester or somewhere. And it was just as The Secret was coming out. So I think it was maybe 2006-ish, I think The Secret came out. And I was walking around this fair, and there was this big stand, and they were selling the books of The Secret. And they were saying, come and have a look, look at this amazing thing that's been discovered. And I remember thinking, well, I already know that. I know that about this. It's not a secret. But what The Secret did was get it out to the masses, which in my eyes was an amazing thing, because more and more people started to understand the power of the mind and started to understand about positive intentions and manifesting. And it was, an amazing journey into discovering all of these magical things that I'd never known about before. I decided to look into psychic development. And I remember going to my first ever class. And there were all these people sat there who were doing really well. They could see auras around people. They could get things from a piece of jewellery or a watch, a little bit like what the lady did for me way back. I now know that's called psychometry. At the time I didn't know anything. And I remember, I was useless. I was rubbish. So bad, I didn't get anything, like zero. They'd be saying, like, oh, what can you see? What can you feel and sense? And I was like, nothing. But I remember driving home that night, and I was filled up with so much emotion because I knew that I'd found my path. Even though I wasn't good, I was rubbish, I knew it was what I was meant to be doing, so I just kept going back. And, sometimes we'd be sat there and we'd be talking about meditation, and everybody would be saying, oh, I had this most amazing experience, and I was on this flying carpet, or I was on a unicorn's back, and we just flew over the world and all of this. And they'd get to me and they'd be like, what happened with you? And I was like, I saw purple. And they'd be like, oh, brilliant, great, come on then, what else? And I'd be like, no, that's it. I saw purple. That was it. So again, I feel that not being very good at the psychic and just seeing purple when I meditated is actually part of what was meant to happen for me, because that then helps me in my teaching now. Because then the lots of the people that said to me, I'm not very good at this, I can't do this, I'm hopeless, it it helps me to be able to help them and to say to them, you don't need to see this, you don't need to see that, you don't have to experience this to be spiritual. And it was then, again, I started working more with the psychic side. I then qualified in Reiki, so Reiki level 1, Reiki level 2. I think a lot of people that start on their spiritual journeys often start with Reiki. That helped with my intuition. It helped with my spiritual connection as well. And it helped with everything. And then it got to a point where I realised that I wanted to spend more and more time working with my spiritual tools and things. And I ended up being off work for 6 months with stress. And I never went back. So I made the decision to leave my paid job, my title, and become self-employed. So I set up my own, I became self-employed and worked under the umbrella of another travel agency. So I worked from home, basically. So my time became my time, which meant that I could focus on a lot more other things. And it was a scary thing to do, let me tell you. It was very scary because I got a mortgage and no regular income coming in. And within those 6 months, I bought a dog because I thought, if I buy a dog, I can't go back to work. So I bought a dog. And then that was it. That was another part of my decision. And it's sort of fast forward. I started to realise that I wanted to teach spiritual subjects and topics. So the first thing that I did was become a Reiki master. So I did that in 2013. And the reason I did that was so that I could strengthen my own spiritual connection and spiritual connection. But it was kind of my gateway into teaching. I think because I've been obviously a manager of travel agents and a kind of a leadership role, that stays with you, and I knew that I wanted to help people and guide people. And that's when I started to teach. So I think January, February 2014, I ran my first Reiki course. And then from there, I started teaching angel card readings, how to read angel card readings, and lots of other things, sort of psychic development and all kinds of different things. And, so now we're in 2023. Things are changing again. I've just created a membership for female lightworkers to come and join together, progress on the spiritual path. And my path is just evolving and evolving all the time. We're forever learning. The journey never ends. It's a constant journey of enlightenment. It's a constant researching, reading, experiencing. But I do know that the reason that I incarnated now is so that I can help more and more people get onto their spiritual path, but also from a down-to-earth, practical, no BS kind of manner, no fluff. I know I've got my fluff behind me, but no fluffiness in terms of how I teach. Because there doesn't need to be the fluffiness with it. I teach from the heart, I teach from my soul, and I know that I am meant to help more and more and more and more people and get the word out there. The more that we move towards the spiritual awakening, the more that we move towards living more in 5D, fifth dimensional vibrations and energy and frequencies, more people need to understand and tune in to their own spiritual frequencies themselves, and that is what I'm here to do. So I know that this is quite a long video, but I really hope that you find it a little bit inspirational, that I can go from somebody that was a complete non-believer to now be a teacher and to understand the magical gifts that we've been given. And a lot of these gifts are lying dormant within people because they've not accessed them yet. So when we talk about having a sixth sense, this is the sixth sense, the psychic, the intuitive, you know, about being your own cheerleader, you know, working on your own path, journey, just being there for yourself as well, and kind of on the path of moving a lot of the noise and the busyness of life away. You know, my life now, today in March 2023, is different to how it was a few years ago. Even when I was still on my spiritual path, I was still doing a lot of the things that I don't, you know, partying, drinking, all of that. I don't do any of that anymore because it doesn't resonate with me anymore. And what we tend to find is that the more we progress on our spiritual journey, we cast off a lot of the old ways and a lot of the lower vibrational things that we used to do that just don't longer sit within our etherical body. You know, they don't blend with my aura very well. You know, I find being around a lot of people is not necessarily how I want to be anymore. I crave the peace and the quiet and just being in nature and outside and being at one with my spirituality. So I hope that you've enjoyed this, gained a little bit more insight into me and who I am. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. So please do let me know below. Give me some feedback, some comments, and let me know if this resonates with your own journey as well. Because I think a lot of people now are finding that they've gone from being a certain way to something now completely different. And I do know also that lockdown initiated that for a lot of people. My life's changed quite a lot since lockdown, and I'm actually truly very grateful for that. And more people are coming into my path that are meant to be on this journey with me, which again, I am truly, truly grateful for. So please do hit the like button just to let me know that you've appreciated what I've been talking about. And please also subscribe to the channel, press the bell, and I will see you all in the next video. Namaste.